Hello, Taylor Ellwood here, and welcome to the Indie Author Business Success video series. Today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be learning about ASIN ads, which are another type of ad that you can create on Amazon Ads. It's another type of product ad. So what is an ASIN? Well, let's take a look here. We're on my book dashboard here, and I'm just going to highlight this here. Where it says ASIN, that is referring specifically to the basically the ebook ISBN number that you have. Now you might also note, you might be like, well, wait a minute, Taylor. I also notice under the print that there's an ASIN number, and that's actually referring to the print ISBN number. Now, if we go and let's actually go to one of these. Let's go to one of these books. We're going to go to the zombie Secret Missions of the Zombie Apocalypse Call Center, and I'm also going to do this for Inner Alchemy. So, if we go here for Secret Missions, we'll just let it pop up, and of course that. What we're going to see is that these ISBN numbers, that this ASIN number, at least as far as Amazon is concerned, is also referencing the specific book, and in this case, the specific version of the book. So if we go here, and we see up here, we see that same ASIN number that we had over on here. So as you can see, it's right there. Now, if we go over here, we'll see that if we go down here, here's that same ASIN number right here. Now let's go over to the paperback real quick and take a look at that. And now the ASIN number is this number here. And if we go here, we see that. So it's not even just an ISBN number. It's also a specific number that Amazon is referring to. And you'll note that this same number is down under here. So for print books, you're going to have a different ASIN than you will for ebooks. This is important because when you're doing ISBN ads, then you can actually decide what type of ads you want people to or you can decide if you're going to target paperback or ebook ads. Now, one thing I do want to note is that the ASIN is that in general for ASIN ads, what I've seen, the conventional wisdom shared by Robert Ryan, is that it's in his book Amazon Ads Unleashed, is that you should really focus your ASIN ads on ebooks as opposed to paperback. And his argument for that really boils down to this idea that you're going to do better with ebook when you're self-published. I'm a little on the fence on that one, but let's come over here, and this is for Inner Alchemy, and I just want to show this again to you because again this is really worthwhile for understanding. As you can see here, we have the same we have the ASIN for the ebook version on here, and if we go into the paperback version, which we're going to do right now, and the paperback version, wow, that took us somewhere we didn't want to go. I hope that's not the ASIN number for my book. Let's try that again. There we go. As you can see, it's the 17202220002. So you can see there are different ASIN numbers, and it's worth noting that because if you're going to be doing ads, you want to keep that in mind. Now note that on here, the ASIN is 17202220002. So even though it's in there, it's worth noting that overall it's not the same thing as what we saw with the Secret Missions, where it had its own, even though it had an ISBN number, it had its own ASIN number for the print book. So that's something to keep in mind as well when you're coming up with ASIN ads. Now, You might be wondering, why would we want to even come up with ASIN ads? Well, it's another way to target your books from a product standpoint. And the benefit of it is that instead of targeting a category or using a keyword, what you're doing is you are actually targeting it so that specific books, your ad is associated with specific books. Now, what I recommend doing if you want to do ASNI ads, I recommend coming up with, again, like using Excel or whatever you want to use, come up with basically a spreadsheet. In this case, what you're going to see, these are a bunch of ASINs for zombie apocalypse books. And so what I do, and basically how I gathered them, I mean, you have a couple different ways. You can do like I know there's a tool called ASIN pick list that you can use. You can also simply go to the individual books on Amazon and pull them out. One of the recommendations that Robert Ryan makes is going and, for example, we'll go into here and go to vampire horror here. And in this case, of course, this is taking us to the print version, but this is worthwhile seeing. We're going to see the top 100 in relationship to vampires in this case. And so one recommendation that he might have is that you would go into, for example, the top 100 and pull out the ASIN number for that specific book. You would just scroll down here and what you're going to do is basically pull that ASIN, which in this case would be this number 168369, because that's print. Now, if we go and we look at the Kindle version, what we're going to see is a similar thing, but again, we're going to have a different ISBN number. Note that he doesn't have the ribbon up here that he did for the print version, so that's kind of an interesting thing to note, because we saw like the number 1. But again, we come down here and there's the ASIN, so then you would just copy and paste that and put that into your, in this case, into your spreadsheet here. Now this is for vampire horror, and in like my case, I would say, well, I mean, that's not quite what I would automatically associate my book with. I think that it's a category that got put there because it was vampires, werewolves, and zombies. But then I guess when it comes right down to it, it comes down to vampire horror in this case. But I mean, for all intents and purposes, zombies are similar enough. It certainly doesn't hurt to find a category that's somewhat relevant and use it as a way to get something where that you want to go with. We're going to go over up here a bit by the categories. I'm going up to horror in this case. And again, we're going to see these are different ASIN books. Now, the one thing you want to keep in mind when you're doing an ASIN ad is that ideally you are picking the ones that are selling really well, like in the top 100. So you might come to like the top 100 page here and then pull out like the ASIN for Dean Koontz, the ASIN for World War Z, and for some of these other ones. So that way you could create ads that would target these particular books. Now, the thing you also, again, you want to keep in mind is that, like as with anything else, you want your books to be hitting the ASIN ads that are going to be relevant. And one thing that I find, at least, and we're going to go here over actually to Kindle, one thing I find at least is that sometimes you're going to have some of these categories where they're super popular, but they're filled with non-relevant books. I'm going to show you that in a few moments with one, in this case with Inner Alchemy, because what we're going to do is we're going to look at the ASIN for like the magic or the occult, and what we're going to find is that it's not really relevant for that some of the books that are in there aren't relevant. So you don't want to target those ASINs because they're going to be for fantasy books. I mean, I guess you could if that's your if you're like you don't mind that, but that you're bringing potential contamination because the audience that reads fantasy books may not be the audience that reads occult books, or in this case, zombie books or whatever else it is that you might be going with. In this case, we're going to go down here to science fiction and fantasy, and take a look here. The key thing with, and this kind of goes back to categories. The key thing to remember, like with your categories, is that you really want books that are relevant to the categories, and you have to think those out and really pick good ones. In the case of the zombie apocalypse series, as an example, I picked humorous because I think it's relevant under science fiction. I've also picked post-apocalyptic. So let's take a look at that. So in some of these cases, I mean, some of these are definitely going to be relevant, like the pandemic book. But like this one, New Madrid earthquake, probably isn't going to be the same kind of thing. This one here, Iron Prince, again, looks more like a fantasy book. So probably shouldn't even be in there. So when you're picking out your ASINs, you want to think very carefully about the ASINs that you're picking, because you want them to be relevant to the book, relevant to the audience that you're going for. In this sense, the one thing to keep in mind with ASINs is that they're really a little bit different, because what you're really doing is you're not just drilling down to a given category, you're drilling down to the actual books and trying to pick the relevant books that are going to help you find the appropriate audience that's going to be reading your book. Another good example, this one, Alien First Contact. I mean, I wouldn't pick that for the zombie apocalypse series, because it doesn't really have much to do with aliens. And let's take another example here. So in this case, we're going to go back to the other book that I popped up, which is Inner Alchemy. And in this one, and let's see, let's do the ebook version of it. And it's taking its little time there. Sorry, folks, but that's kind of the way it goes when you've got, things being what they are. So we're going to go down here and let's take a look. In this case, we'll go with occult metaphysical phenomenon for the fun of it. And he's doing pretty good here, but like, as you can see, here's an example of like, these are books that should not be in this section, but they're being put there because the authors are basically trying to target people they think are going to read this. And the problem with it is that it's hitting a category that's actually for nonfiction. So I wouldn't target the ASIN on these books, even though they're in the top 100. And that's why I really recommend, like, if you're going to take the approach of the Asin ads, that you don't just go with the automatic advice of looking at the top 100. You want to find books that are relevant. Like this book, Escape of the Fae and Curse of the Fae, these are fantasy romance. These books should not belong in here in this category. They've been put there, and hopefully at some point Amazon will clean that up a little bit and make it harder for people to put books into the wrong categories. But in this case, it makes it harder for people that are targeting this to hit the relevant books, because instead you're getting fantasy when this should actually be this should be in the fantasy section and not in the nonfiction section, which it's under. So it's a good example of a problem that can occur. And it's one of those things where if you're just copying ASINs willy-nilly from different books, you may end up targeting people that wouldn't pick your book up at all, because even though it's falling under the category that your book is in, it's not the relevant book for the audience. And some people might say, well, Taylor, it's number 2 on the occult metaphysical phenomena. I mean, how do I know that my audience wouldn't actually read that if that's what I'm shooting for? And my answer to that would be, it depends. I can tell you, as someone who writes in a number of different things, I write nonfiction for occult and esoteric books, and I write fiction, and I can tell you the two audiences do not mix that well. I mean, I have a few people that read my occult nonfiction that also read my fiction, but most of the people that are reading my occult nonfiction aren't reading my fiction. They could care less, and that's okay. And most of the people reading my fiction probably aren't reading my occult nonfiction either. So you just want to keep that in mind, because when you're choosing relevant books, you want to pick the appropriate ASINs. In this case, same thing with categories. And again, I've heard rumblings on the horizon, more rumors than anything else, and I think more hopeful commentary than anything else, that maybe at some point Amazon will clean some of this up. We'll see. I mean, Amazon might just say, hey, it's in our interest. These books are selling. What do we care? Who can really say? You just have to keep that in mind when you're putting books out there, and recognize that sometimes you're going to have books that are in the wrong location, that shouldn't be where they're at. And so if you're doing an ASIN ad, you don't want to be picking those books. And since we're going with the advice that's given to us, we always want to dig deep into that advice and question it carefully, not as a critique. I mean, I've actually found Robert Ryan's books really helpful. I mean, I can guarantee I sell more books as a result. But in this particular case, that's what I would be wary of. So how do we even create an ASIN ad? I mean, I've been talking about them for a little bit. Let's take a look here. Oh, look at this. Introducing estimated. This estimates for normalized. Wow. Nice. Well, that's cool. We're not going to worry about it right now. So now we're going to go in as if we were going to create an ad, and we'll do it with the Zombie Apocalypse series. I have actually gone through, and what I did is I did a search on Amazon for zombie books, and then I just started copying the ASINs, because my thinking on it was, I don't want to go automatically with the top 100. I want to go with the books that people are likely reading. Now, I have done that with like some of my occult nonfiction, and I'm going to tell you, even with either approach with ASINs, I have honestly not found ASIN ads to be that great. They do okay. I'm showing them to you on here because I think, one, it's good for you to know about the different types of ads, and two, you might find that they do better for you than for me. Let's, in this case, just do a ASIN ad. Budget. We're going to do manual targeting in this case. And what we're going to do is we're going to go here and add in the Zombie Apocalypse call center. Let's do secret missions instead for the fun of it. All right, so there's secret missions. And now what we would do is we'd choose product targeting, and we could go with categories, but in this case, we're not going to. We're going to go with individual products. And what we're going to do is we're going to enter in a list. And so what you can do at that point is just copy your ASINs. Now, it's not going to automatically tell you the title of the books, but like I have 197 here. So if I go in here and I go here, and we'll stick it with 75 cents. Then I hit target. What that's doing is it's hitting 170 or 197 different books in this case. And so you can see here and here's the product: Zombible, Zombie Apocalypse, Zombie Apocalypse Now, Apocalypse Supposed to. So you can see these are all relevant books to anyone who enjoys reading zombie books. The idea being in this case that what I'm doing is I'm hitting those books with the specific ad. And then I'd go and create my little thing and hit launch campaign. So why am I not doing that right now? Well, again, I have not found ASIN ads to be that great. I'm not going to say that it's not possible to do them. Obviously it is. And some people do find them to be helpful. But I'm presenting you with my own experience, and with my ASIN ads, they've been okay, but they've never been hugely profitable. I think, it's a relatively new feature for Amazon to be able to target books that way. I've kind of decided in my case that I'm going to wait like another half year and then try again and see what happens and see if they're better. My reasoning on that is, sometimes with like new ad types and things like that, you kind of have to give it a little bit of time. Again, the reason why I'm displaying this though is because I think it's important for you to know about these kinds of ads and know what you can do. And again, you may find with your own genre that it works really well. uh, you know, I would recommend picking up Robert Ryan's Amazon Ads Unleashed, which is a great book and has some very handy advice whether or not you do ASIN ads, because it is helpful when it comes to developing, better Amazon ads. So I'd recommend that. But at the same time, just keep in mind that the ASIN, at least from what I can tell so far, hasn't been that great. And again, I've tested it out the way that he's recommended it. I've tested it with my own approaches, and I haven't found them to be that great. Not yet. But I'm willing to bet that, half a year from now, maybe even a few months from now, I might try again in a few months after the holiday season. Might be better by then. We'll see. And really, the name of the game when you're doing any kind of online advertising is you have to test, test, and test again. Don't go on the assumption of, well, I did this a year ago and it didn't work. You have to go in with a thing of, well, I did this a year ago and it didn't work then. Will it work now? It might. You might come up with better things at that point. So you want to keep that in mind when you're doing your ads, and really keep in mind that whatever you're choosing to do, it's got to be it's got to be done in a way that's going to help you really determine whether or not your books are going to actually have a chance to sell. All right, that's it for today's video, and thank you guys for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful week.